Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Anime Dreams. I'm thrilled to have you here on my YouTube channel. Today's fanfic topic is, what if female Naruto was reborn in steel and gold? Quick disclaimer. This channel is all about entertainment and sparking engaging discussions. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Without further ado, let's dive in. From as far back as Edward could remember, his twin sister, Emma, had always stood out in their family. Unlike their other siblings, Emma didn't inherit their father's eye color. Instead, she had their mother's striking turquoise eyes and unusual whisker-like marks on her cheeks. Emma had always been close to their parents, often clinging to them and asking for hugs, especially from their father. While Edward enjoyed the comfort of his mother's embrace, Emma's affection was unmatched. Even their baby brother, Alphonse, who was still a toddler, didn't seek attention as much as Emma did. "Play with me, Ed," Emma said one day, holding a toy block from their birthday set. Edward looked up from his storybook, meeting her determined gaze. Just like their family friend Winry, Emma never seemed interested in the dolls she received as gifts. Instead, she preferred Edward's toys. He didn't mind. Playing with Emma was always fun. She never cried when he teased her, unlike their baby brother, who often did. "No," Edward replied, returning his attention to his book. "Why not?" "Mama won't play with me because she's busy with Al," Emma huffed, crossing her arms. "And it's your fault she's spending so much time with him. If you hadn't made him cry, she wouldn't have to." Edward frowned, annoyed by her words. Why did she always defend Alphonse? They were twins, shouldn't she side with him? And why didn't she seem upset that their mother often doted on Al more than on them? Then again, Emma had a way of winning their father's favor too. Father always smiled at her, ruffled her golden hair, and carried her on his shoulders whenever she asked. Mother always takes his side. "And you do too," Edward muttered, looking away from her questioning eyes. Emma blinked at him, her turquoise eyes softening. She sat down beside him, glancing at his open storybook, then back at him with an expression he didn't fully understand. "That's not true," Emma said gently. "I don't want to take Al's side all the time, but you keep making him cry. Mama doesn't spend more time with him because she loves him more. She loves all of us the same. Remember, she carried both of us together, and that wasn't easy. And I don't love Al more than you. You're both my little brothers. I'm the older twin." Edward grumbled, glaring at her. Emma laughed, unfazed by his protest. She always called him her little brother, even though he was older by 10 minutes and taller by an inch. It irritated him to no end. "You don't act like the older brother," Emma teased, her tone light but her eyes serious. "Big brothers are supposed to protect their younger siblings. It's our job to look after Al when mother can't, even if it's from each other. If Mama didn't love you, she wouldn't care when you got into trouble. And if I didn't love you, I wouldn't want to play with you or share my secrets. So stop thinking we love Al more than you. That's not true." Edward stared at her, unsure how to respond. Emma's words were always so straightforward, yet they carried a wisdom that made her seem older than her years. "You let mother scold me all the time," he muttered. "Being scolded isn't so bad," Emma said, turning to look out the window where their mother was playing with Alphonse. "It means someone cares about us. A lot of people wish they had someone to scold them because it means they're paying attention to you." Even at the age of 2, Edward could sense that Emma was hiding something behind her smile. There was a sadness in her eyes that he didn't understand, and it bothered him. She was supposed to be the happy one, the twin who always smiled, no matter what. "I still don't like getting scolded," Edward grumbled. "One day, you'll miss it," Emma said softly. "When that day comes, it'll just be me and Al by your side. That's why you should be kind to us now. Go downstairs and apologize to Al for making him cry. Please, Ed. Al is our only brother, and we have to protect him, just like Mama protects us." Edward sighed, realizing she had a point. He didn't want to let her down. If apologizing to Alphonse would make Emma happy, he supposed he could do it, for her sake, if not for their mother's. The last thing Edward wanted was to disappoint his twin sister. It had been 2 years since Naruto Uzumaki was reborn as Emma Elric. Unlike her previous life, she now had a family, a big brother, a baby brother, and 2 loving parents. Trisha and Van Hohenheim could never replace the parents she had lost, but they gave her the warmth and care she had once dreamed of. Her mother brushed her long hair, hugged her, and praised her for her good deeds. Her father, though more reserved, never denied her requests for piggyback rides or the comfort of his embrace. Emma cherished the love and attention from her new family, yet she couldn't ignore the sense that something about her father was different. His presence didn't feel entirely human, not in the same way her mother and siblings did. This realization became clear when she regained the memories of her past life. Clinging to her older brother Edward and younger brother Alphonse, Emma felt her heart ache. She had once given her life to save the world as Naruto Uzumaki, and in return, she was granted this new life, a life filled with the family she had always yearned for. That is why she clung to them so fiercely, protected Al, and played with Ed as if every moment was precious. She was determined to safeguard her family, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Lying awake one evening, Emma felt her father's presence near them. Was he going to silently watch over them again? She wondered why he never stroked their hair or showed affection as freely as her mother did. She could sense his hesitation, his fear, though she didn't understand its cause. You know, her mother's voice drifted through the door, you could stroke their hair or pat them. You shouldn't wait for Emma to ask for those things. They're your children, Van. Why are you so distant? Emma squeezed her brothers a little tighter, her heart echoing her mother's question. Why did her father hold back? He wasn't the first father figure she'd had. In her past life, there had been Iruka-sensei and Jiraiya. But even they, for all their faults, had shown their love without reservation. I don't want them to become monsters like me, Van Hohenheim's voice was low but firm. Monsters? Did he truly think of himself as one? To Emma, monsters were those who harmed others without remorse, those who ignored a child's cries for help. Her father, with his guilt and his efforts to protect his family, was nothing like that. Emma turned onto her stomach, wishing she could tell her father how she felt. She wanted to share her memories, to tell him about her past life as Naruto Uzumaki. But who would believe her? The idea of reincarnation was beyond reason, especially for someone like Van Hohenheim, whose life revolved around the principles of alchemy. What if he asked how she died? Could she admit she had perished at the hands of someone she once cared for deeply? Kurama's familiar voice stirred in her mind. That man doesn't know what a real monster is, does he, Naruto? Emma sighed inwardly. I can't tell him something he won't believe, Kurama. Even if I tried, it would go against everything he knows. And what if someone overhears? How would I explain that I died at 17? Kurama growled softly. You still love that fool, don't you? Even though he was the reason you never achieved your dream. Even though he was the one who... I can't help how I feel, Emma interrupted. Do you think I want to? His actions haunt me, Kurama. I see his face in my dreams, covered in blood. And it terrifies me. Kurama fell silent, sensing her pain. Finally, Emma whispered, do you know what his last words to me were? He asked if I'd give him a chance if we both survived. He even apologized, something I thought he'd never do. And would you? Kurama asked sharply. You don't even know if he was given the same chance you were. That Uchiha carried so many sins, he did things that were unforgivable. He killed you, Emma. Emma didn't respond. Deep down, she knew Kurama was right. Sasuke Uchiha's actions had left scars she could never erase. But now, in this life, her focus was on her brothers. She wouldn't let Edward or Alphonse walk down a dark path like Sasuke had. She would guide them, protect them, and ensure they grew up to be good people. I will protect you both, she whispered, glancing at her sleeping brothers. Even if it's from each other. I won't let our family fall apart. I'll do everything I can to keep us safe. A strange feeling tugged at her heart, a sense that her brothers would face challenges greater than she could imagine. But she was ready. She would do whatever it took to protect them. Looking up at the sturdy tree behind her home, Emma pondered whether she could climb it without using her hands. It had been months since her memories returned, but she hadn't dared to attempt her old tricks, not with Edward upset over their younger brother and her own tendency to nap during the afternoons. Now, however, seemed like the perfect opportunity. Her father was preoccupied in his office, her mother was busy preparing lunch, and both Edward and Alphonse were fast asleep. It was the ideal moment to put her skills to the test. Emma placed her foot against the tree trunk, focusing her energy as she channeled chakra to the sole of her foot. Steadying herself, she planted her other foot higher. If she truly wished to protect her family, she needed to grow stronger. No, she needed to protect her country as well. Joining the army was her goal. The military would provide her the resources to support her family and satisfy her adventurous spirit. You know, there are other paths, Naruto, Kurama's voice echoed softly in her mind as she ascended the tree. You've seen the harsh realities of war. Why put yourself through that again? There are other ways to explore the world and fulfill your purpose. Emma paused for a moment, a faint smile playing on her lips. Edward is destined to follow in father's footsteps as an alchemist, she replied. I've seen how he studies father's books with fascination. Alphonse, though, he has a curious heart like mine. He'll want to explore the world. I want my brothers to chase their dreams in a land that's safe and prosperous. To ensure that, I need to serve and fight for this country. Besides, she added, taking another step upward, being a soldier is what I know best. It's who I am. Reaching the branch, Emma turned and carefully sat down, her legs dangling in the air. The idea of becoming a doctor had never appealed to her. As for alchemy, while she found it intriguing, reminding her of the sealing techniques she once studied, it didn't ignite the same passion. Alchemy could be a tool to protect her family, but it wasn't her calling. She tilted her head back and gazed at the clear blue sky. Her priorities were simple: protect her family, live a full life, and one day create a family of her own. For now, she was content to dream of a future where her brothers smiled with pride, her mother praised her achievements, and even her stern father acknowledged her efforts with a rare smile. Emma, where are you? Her mother's voice pulled her back to the present. For now, her dreams would have to wait. She was just a child, albeit one with memories of another life. And for now, she had the chance to enjoy the warmth of being raised by a loving family. I'm up here, Mother, Emma called down, her voice cheerful. Her mother, Tricia, stepped outside and looked up, startled to see Emma perched on the branch. Concern flashed across her face. Emma, how on earth did you get up there? She exclaimed, glancing around as if searching for a ladder. Shaking her head, she sighed. Stay right there. I'm getting your father. At this rate, I don't know what you'll be like when you're 10. Emma giggled, her laughter bright and carefree, earning a reluctant smile from her mother. Despite everything, having Tricia as her mother filled her with gratitude. Her first mother, Kushina Uzumaki, had sacrificed everything to protect her, and she would always honor her memory. But Tricia's love and care in this life were something she cherished deeply. Kushina would not be upset, Kurama murmured. She wanted nothing more than your happiness. If calling Tricia your mother brings you joy, then Kushina would support it. Kushina will always be my first mother, Emma said firmly. She gave her life for me and carried me in her heart. I'll never stop honoring her. But Tricia is my mother now, and I love her for the kindness she shows me every day. Emma, come here. Her mother called again, her voice now tinged with relief. Emma glanced down and smiled. For now, she would treasure the love of the family she had in this life and work toward a brighter future. The blonde girl blinked in surprise as she spotted her father holding onto a tree trunk, his hand outstretched as if inviting her to take it. Beaming with excitement, the young child leapt into Hohenheim's arms, who caught her securely. He glanced briefly at her clean hands, a slight frown crossing his face, but he chose to remain silent. Carefully, He began descending the tree, holding her firmly. Once they were safely on the ground, he passed her into the care of her mother. Emma Elric, don't climb trees unless someone is watching you, her mother scolded gently as they made their way back to the bedroom Emma shared with her brothers. You could have hurt yourself, broken an arm or a leg. But I didn't, Mother. Emma replied, waving her hands to demonstrate her uninjured state. See? I'm perfectly fine. Her mother sighed, kneeling down beside her. Emma, one wrong step could have caused a serious accident, she said, tucking her in next to her sleeping brothers. If something happened to you, it would make Mommy very sad. And you don't want to make Mommy sad, do you? The blonde-haired girl shook her head, her gaze locking with Trisha's worried, tender eyes before shifting to the window that framed the world outside. Emma understood she would have to continue her training in secret if she wanted to keep her mother content. She resolved to practice in the dead of night, knowing it would be too difficult to explain the concept of chakra to her parents. Despite the 19 years of memories she carried, the intricacies of chakra remained inexplicable to those unfamiliar with it. She often left the more challenging explanations to Sakura. I promise I won't do anything to upset Mommy, Emma said earnestly. Trisha's tense posture softened as she smiled and ran her fingers gently through the child's golden locks. As Emma closed her eyes, a wave of nostalgia washed over her, bringing vivid images of the people she had lost in her previous life. Questions lingered in her mind. Had Kakashi and Sakura succeeded in liberating everyone from their dreams? Who had taken up the mantle of the sixth Hokage? While these questions burned within her, she chose to live in the present, treasuring the serene moment as her mother continued to stroke her hair. The past had taught her a valuable lesson: cherish the time spent with loved ones, for one could never predict when that time might be stolen away. If there was one trait Emma readily admitted to sharing with her twin brother Edward, it was their shared curiosity about their father's pursuits. Ever since their family photo was taken, Hohenheim had devoted himself obsessively to his research, poring over journals and alchemy books. What drove him to spend endless hours secluded in his study? Why did he remain so oblivious to the times Emma and Edward peeked through the door, hoping for a moment of his attention? These unanswered questions gnawed at Emma as she sipped her milk and observed her father in silence. What are you thinking about this time, Emmy? Edward whispered, placing his milk bottle under the table. Emma smiled faintly, glancing at their younger brother Alphonse, who was savoring the yogurt Trisha had given him, then at their chatting parents. She finally retrieved Edward's bottle, taking a sip before responding. You've been acting odd ever since Mother dressed you up for the family photo, Edward teased. Emma gave him a thoughtful smile, debating whether to share her growing curiosity about their father's work or to wait until he was alone in his room. Regardless, she felt no need to keep her thoughts hidden from Edward. He had every right to know. What are you two whispering about? Their mother asked, drawing everyone's attention to the pair. Emma met her mother's gaze calmly. We were talking about how Father hasn't been spending much time with us. He's always engrossed in his studies, she stated plainly, turning her attention to her father's golden eyes. Her parents exchanged surprised glances, while Edward stared at her in wide-eyed shock, realizing the depth of her thoughts. Alphonse merely looked confused. Edward and I are just curious why Father is so absorbed in his research, Emma continued. Emma. Her father's expression of sadness made her chest tighten. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if she had chosen the wrong moment to confront him. Yet, she knew Hohenheim and Trisha would likely shield her and her brothers from the truth, viewing them as too young to grasp the gravity of the situation. To her parents, she was their 2-year-old daughter, far too innocent to be burdened with complex realities. They couldn't have known that her mind held the experiences of a 19-year-old. I'm conducting research that could help our family, Hohenheim finally said, preempting Trisha's expected reprimand for such candid questions at the breakfast table. Emma tilted her head, scrutinizing his body language. Then she offered a wide, knowing smile. Do you believe he's telling the whole truth, Naruto? Kurama's deep voice resonated within her mind as she took another sip of Edward's milk. She didn't need to close her eyes to imagine the nine-tailed fox's scowl. He isn't lying, Kurama, Emma replied inwardly, reaching for a piece of bread before Edward could. Breaking it in half, she handed a piece to her twin. But I can tell he isn't sharing everything either. For now, this will suffice, she added with a sigh. You've finally learned patience, Kurama remarked, his tone tinged with mockery. Not patience, Emma corrected, spreading butter on her bread. She gazed around the table at her smiling mother, her studious father, and her concerned brothers. I think I'm just not ready to learn the full truth. I suspect it might involve why he views himself as a monster. And you're afraid knowing the truth will shatter the image you've built of him, Kurama surmised as she bit into her bread. Emma didn't respond immediately. Only Kurama truly understood her deepest fears and longings. He alone knew how much she wanted to preserve the illusion of a perfect family. Can you blame me? She whispered inwardly. I never truly had a father until I was reborn. I want to hold on to this peace, even if it's fleeting. I want to be a little foolish, a little naive. I just want to experience the childhood I missed. Is that so wrong? Her internal plea was met with silence, though she felt Kurama's familiar presence envelop her. He, too, understood the weight of yearning for something that once seemed unattainable. She was aware that her emotions were getting the better of her, but the image of Neiji's lifeless body, the blood-staining Sasuke's arms, and the heap of fallen comrades around her relentlessly haunted her. With these memories swirling in her mind, she couldn't help but question the purpose behind her life. Why had she been allowed to live through such pain? Was it a cruel reminder of her past weaknesses? Maybe it was to ensure that she would never again witness the death of someone she loved. Emma. Why are you crying? Her mother asked with concern. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Please, tell us. As Emma touched her wet cheeks, she realized with a start that the tears were flowing freely down her fingers. She may have been Naruto Uzumaki, but she was also Emma Elric, and her heart felt like that of a 2-year-old in distress. Despite the memories she carried, she had not yet mastered the control over her emotions, but she vowed she would. She would never allow anyone to use her vulnerabilities against her. It's nothing, Mother, Emma said with a forced smile, masking the sadness. I was just thinking about that sad fairy tale you read to me and Ed, the one where the princess never got her happy ending. But unlike the princess in her mother's tale, Emma was determined not to meet such an early end. Hohenheim stood silently in the doorway, noticing that Emma had taken to drawing again, a habit she had developed over the past few weeks. Trisha wanted to know the real reason Emma had been upset, but he doubted his daughter would open up so easily. She was much like him in that way, keeping her thoughts and feelings hidden from the world. Even so, he knew he could read her better than Trisha could, and he was determined to try. Drawing again, Emma? He asked gently as he sat beside her on the bed. Emma looked up from her artwork, offering a small nod before turning her attention back to the paper. Her father studied the characters she had written, a curious pattern forming in a circle. At first glance, they seemed to resemble Zen's characters, but something about them didn't quite fit. They were different in a way that felt familiar, though he couldn't quite place it. I'm creating a new language, Emma explained with a proud smile. Isn't that cool? How many people can say they made up their own language? Interesting, Hohenheim replied, squinting at the page with growing curiosity. It looks a lot like Zen's, but there are subtle differences. Why create a new language? Emma's eyes met his, serious and thoughtful. Everyone has secrets. You and Mother have secrets, just like Ed and I have secrets. If I don't want anyone to find out about mine, I need to make a language that only I can understand. Secrets can be dangerous if others find out, right? Ed and I take turns reading the spy novels Mother likes. He was torn between being impressed by her intelligence and concerned about what could be making her feel the need to hide things. Why was she so determined to keep things from him and Trisha? Even Ed, her twin, didn't act this way. And what secrets do you have, Emma? He asked, hoping she would open up. Emma gave him a quiet look and added more symbols to her drawing. It wouldn't be a secret if I told you, she said simply. And it's nothing bad, if that's what you're worried about. Does it have something to do with why you were crying earlier? Hohenheim asked, his suspicion growing. Emma froze, a clear sign that he was on the right track. Her secret had something to do with the emotions she couldn't express. Emma's voice was soft as she replied, "Do you ever dream of being somewhere else? A place where you're all alone and don't have anyone to turn to when you're sad?" "It hurts, Father. I sometimes dream of not having you, or Mother, or Ed and Al by my side. I don't know if it's just a dream, or if it's something that really happened." Hohenheim wished he could promise Emma that he would always be there for her. But with his research into ending his immortality, he knew that wasn't a promise he could make. Still, he understood her fears because he shared them. Despite everything he had in his life, his family, he couldn't escape the regrets of his past. "I used to wish I could change things, Emma," he said softly, placing his hand on her head in a gesture of comfort. "Even now, I still wish I could change the past. But sometimes, there are things we can't change." Emma looked up at him, her voice full of emotion. "How did you stop wishing for things to be different?" Hohenheim's heart ached as he pulled her close. He had always found it difficult to comfort his children, but for Emma, he would make the effort. "I focused on the good things," he said, his voice steady, though his heart was heavy. "I thought of you, your brothers, and especially your mother. If things hadn't happened the way they did, I never would have had any of you." Emma hugged him tightly, and in that moment, Hohenheim knew that despite the struggles ahead, their family would always have each other. Emma gazed at him for a few moments before hugging him even tighter, as though silently asking him to never let her go. This was why Hohenheim had longed to find a way to stop his endless journey through life. He stroked his daughter's hair, reflecting on how difficult it would be to live forever, seeing his loved ones, including his children and wife, grow older while he remained the same. He couldn't bear the thought of not being able to age alongside them. He hoped he would find a way to change things before it was too late. 6 months later. "Where are you and Elle going, Ed?" Emma asked, hearing the sound of her brothers stumbling onto the floor. Rubbing her eyes, the young girl sat up, noticing Edward and Alphonse, both still sleepy, standing up and stretching. They glanced at the clock, which read 5 in the morning. Emma frowned when she sensed her father's presence moving farther away, along with her mother. Where could they be going at this hour? She ran a hand through her golden hair and looked at her brothers, wondering if they knew something she didn't. If Edward knew something important, he would have woken her up to talk about it. Maybe her father was busy with his research, or perhaps someone from the village needed his help. Either way, something seemed different. "I don't want them to become like me." Those words had stayed in Emma's mind for the past 6 months. Every time she looked at her father, she wanted to ask him what he meant, but she didn't want to make him feel sad. Instead, she would smile and tell him about her day at school with Edward, with occasional stories from her twin brother. She even shared a funny moment about a small disagreement she had with a classmate who told her she wasn't allowed to be smarter than him. It felt good to stand up for herself. "Al wants to use the bathroom," Edward explained. Since her brothers were already up, Emma decided it was time to leave her bed as well. She kicked the blankets off, grabbed her hair tie from the nightstand, and followed her brothers out of the room. She stood in the hallway, where her parents were talking quietly to each other. "Don't tell them about me," her father said as he put on his jacket. Her mother nodded but looked concerned. "Aren't you going to say goodbye to them?" Father was leaving. "Where is Father going? Why does he need to say goodbye to us?" Emma asked, her voice full of confusion. Her parents turned to her, her mother blinking in surprise at her presence, while her father looked away. If she were anyone else, Emma might have thought her father was ignoring her, but she could feel the sadness in his eyes. "Emma, your father is going on an important trip," her mother explained, gently. But why did it feel like she might not see him again? Emma thought, glancing from her father to her mother. She clenched her hands into fists, noticing the small suitcase in her father's hand and the concerned look in her mother's eyes. Why was he leaving them? Hadn't he told her just 6 months ago that their family was the most important thing in his life? What had changed? She bit her lip to hold back the tears that were starting to form. "What's going on, Edward asked, looking at her with a frown. He turned to their parents, while their little brother blinked sleepily. Why is Emmy sad? I'm not sad, Ed. There's just something in my eye, Emma replied quickly, rubbing her eyes as she tried to smile. See, Ed? I'm fine. I'm a big girl, so there's nothing to worry about. Emma. I'm fine, Ed, she reassured, her gaze remaining focused on her father. She mustered a smile, not just for her father's sake but for her brother's too. See? I'm not crying. If I were sad, I wouldn't be smiling. That means I'm happy. Her mother watched her, opened her mouth to speak, but the little girl stayed locked on her father. It might be a long time before she saw Hohenheim again, long before he would see them. The last thing she wanted for the man who had shown her so much love was sadness. While she felt the ache of his departure, Emma was strong. She had overcome challenges before, including facing moments of danger and enduring coldness from others. This moment, she decided, was nothing compared to those struggles. With that thought in mind, the young girl ran to her father and threw her arms around him. Hohenheim dropped his bag and caught her, his arms enveloping her as she inhaled his familiar scent, her eyes meeting his golden ones, so like her brother's. I'm going to miss you, father, she whispered softly. And you need to say goodbye to Ed and Al. They might think you'll come back tomorrow, but Mom and I know that's not true. You won't be back for a long time, will you? Hohenheim blinked, pausing for a moment before nodding. No, Emma, I won't be back soon. That's why I need you to help your mother when Edward and Alphonse can't. And please, don't climb any more trees while I'm gone. Emma nodded, watching as her father turned to her brothers. He whispered something in Edward's ear, who glanced at her and Alphonse before giving a nod. Hohenheim then spoke to their youngest brother. What was it he had said to Edward, and what was he telling Alphonse? Perhaps their father knew that Alphonse might not remember this moment in the future. But just in case, he wanted to make sure they wouldn't be upset. Goodbye, she said quietly. Little did Emma know, her hunch was correct, it would be 12 long years before she would see her father again. That's all for today, folks. I hope you found this content enjoyable and thought-provoking. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for your support. Warm regards. Anime Dreams.